So thank you, Kathy, and it's good to see everyone here. Are you excited to vote?
Yes.
We've got a lot to vote on. It's going to be a long ballot in Sarasota County for the November election. You will see 2 ballot cards, 17 inches long. So 8.5 inches wide, 17 inches long, front and back, and then front and back potentially on the second card, depending on where you're at in Sarasota County. We often focus on the presidential contest, but there's so many more things to vote on here, right? A lot of county races, charter review board, hospital board. Who thought hospital board would be so exciting? Certainly become a hot race this year. If you're in the city of Sarasota, you're going to have city commission races. If you're in the city of Venice, if you're in the city of Northport, you're going to have those races. You're going to have 6 constitutional amendment questions. You're going to have 1 countywide question. Does anybody know what the countywide question is? It's a school board referendum. We've had a tax referendum that's on the ballot every 4 years, except this election cycle was moved. Typically, it's on a midterm ballot in March, but it was moved to this November presidential election this time. And then there are questions in the city of Venice and the city of Northport on the ballot there. So there's a lot for everyone to vote on. So as Kathy described, what have the elections team, and I don't want to get tangled up here, what have we been doing to prepare for this election? A lot. And we've spent a lot of time preparing for the November election. So after the November gubernatorial election in 2022, I put together a work group in my office to start looking at what we needed to do to get ready for this November election. The first meeting we had of that group was December 21st, 2022. I was a little bit of a Scrooge there because I knew it was going to take a long time and a lot of effort to get prepared the way we needed to get prepared in a county this size with the turnout that we're going to have in Sarasota County to be able to handle this general election. Because what I saw in 2022 in the November election, in 2020, you had a spike in vote mail ballots. And that was due to the pandemic, and that was in every county in Florida, and you saw that across the country. What we saw in November 2022 was a swing back to polling locations where people wanted to vote in person again. And so we saw some lines. We saw the need for more personnel, more equipment and things. And so that's why I got on that right away. So the first thing we did was do a study of all of our polling locations and precincts in the county. At that time, we had 99 precincts in the county. And we studied those locations. We looked at growth patterns in the county. Where are the highest growth areas? Where do we predict the future growth is going to be at in Sarasota County? How do we address that? So what we did was revise the boundary lines for 8 precincts. We added 4 additional precincts. So we went up to 103 precincts, and we added 9 additional polling locations for election. That project took more than a year to complete. The other part of that was increasing the number of poll workers that we're hiring. We're recruiting hundreds of additional poll workers for November over what we would have had just a couple of years ago. The other thing we did was purchase new voting equipment for the county. We stayed with the same vendor, which is ES&S, because in Florida, we use state certified voting equipment. And so there are only 2 systems in Florida that are state certified, it's Dominion or ES&S. We've used ES&S since 2015 in Sarasota County, but I wanted to go into this presidential year with brand new machines. Because even if I could shave off a few seconds every time someone put one of those long ballot cards in there, or maybe had a few, less jams or something, because it's just like any other piece of equipment, right? You had a printer at home or a copier. Over time, things, tend to wear down a little bit. And so we purchased all this new equipment for this year, and we've been using that so far this year. The other thing that we did was purchase an audit system. Florida law requires a post-election audit, And the way that you can do that is you can do a manual audit where the county canvassing board, which is made up of a county judge, myself, and a county commissioner or someone who represents the county commission. The three of us as a body have public meetings, and we're responsible for testing the voting equipment, certifying the election. We do a lot. So with the canvassing board, if you want to do a manual audit, you would do a random draw of one precinct and one race on the ballot. So it's a very small manual audit. This way, we purchased an independent automated audit system. It's the only one certified of its kind in the state of Florida. And what this allows us to do is take 100% of the paper ballots that you cast through the ES&S system, and my team runs those same ballots down through this secondary system and compares the two results to each other. So basically, you're doing a second tabulation for all intents and purposes. Then this system is in a room that's alarmed and cameraed. My staff, to get in the room, have to have swipe cards. There's an A card and B card. They have to marry up. People have different types of cards. And that audit, all of those ballots are run through there with my oversight. So I'm in there with them when they're running the ballots through these scanners for the audit. I personally oversee them. I actually personally oversee all the opening of the vote by mail ballots in the county, all the tabulation of the vote by mail ballots, and every one of those ballots that go through the audit system myself personally. It's a bigger job than people think it is. It's not every 2 days, every couple of years, and the rest of the time. I wish it was like that, but it's really not. It's a lot bigger job. We have a staff of 36 full-time staff members. We have, this year our budget is more than $9 million, probably approaching close to 10. We'll probably spend close to $2 million just for the general election. I hired another 700 seasonal or temporary staff. These are not poll workers. These are people. We have a call center that looks like a QVC call center with the headsets and the computers and operators hanging by. Those temporary staff work in there. They work in our warehouse and our various locations and help augment the 36 people. And then we'll have about 1,000 poll workers for the general election. So we're a big, probably a lot bigger operation than people realize. We have locations in Northport, Venice, downtown Sarasota. We have a warehouse past the interstate. And we also have a new location because we purchased a new election operations center. It's on Fruitville Road, 4440 Fruitville Road. It's not really a public-facing building. It has limited public access. It's about 24,000 square feet, but it is where we do kind of all the behind-the-scenes work to make the elections happen here in Sarasota County. So we've been in there since June. I will say that I have to thank the county commission, because when I talk about purchasing the voting system, or I talk about this audit system, or I talk about this building, there's nothing that I've asked for that they haven't provided. They take our operation very seriously, and when I go to the county, they're always supportive of us and all of our needs here, because they know how important this is to get right here in Sarasota County. So I think you all know the basics. There are 3 ways to vote. You can vote by mail. If you want to vote by mail ballot and you haven't gotten one, now's the time. Don't wait till the last minute to request your vote by mail ballot. We'll have in-person early voting for 14 days at 10 sites in the county, 10 hours a day. I like to vote early in person. Kind of gives you the convenience of vote by mail, but it gives you that election day in-person experience. We use the same voting booths, the same electronic poll books, and show your photo signature ID. You know, you're marking a paper ballot, putting it in the same tabulator, except you get to choose which one of the sites during early voting you get to vote. And then election day for the traditionalists, we'll have the polls open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I believe that we'll have more than 80% turnout in this general election. Coming up, we'll see where it lands. We had about a 32% in the primary, which was good because the average statewide was 22%. So Sarasota is typically higher, has a higher turnout, especially for large counties. we tend to have one of the highest turnouts for the larger counties in the state of Florida. As Kathy mentioned, I spent a year up until May as the president of the Florida Supervisors of Elections. Florida has 67 counties. Each of the counties has a supervisor of elections. And so it was an honor that my peers chose me to lead the Florida Supervisors of Elections for a year. Gave me an opportunity to work closely with the Florida Department of State, Secretary of State, legislative staff and leadership, things of that nature to make sure that Florida, and in particular Sarasota County, was well represented. I think we do a great job with our elections in Sarasota County. We're not perfect, but we do a heck of a job here of following the law, planning, preparing for these elections, trying to get it right for you, and doing it better each time. One of the things that we do is after our elections, we do an after-action review. So I ask the staff to contribute to that. I usually give them some kind of question and prompts for this review. We collect that data. I have project managers in my office. They take that data and things that are actionable, they assign that out to departments, assign it to particular staff with timelines and deadlines, and then make sure that those tasks are completed. So we'll be doing that again after November because it'll take probably a year to, or more to accomplish some of those things that'll be on that list. But we try to bring those kind of best practices, maybe those private sector best practices into the public sector and how you can improve and how you can better run elections for you, because you all deserve the best that we can give you, the best job that we can do for you. We take it very seriously. I love being a supervisor of elections. I spoke last night downtown, just a block away, and I was telling a group there that I have had the pleasure, so I was just reelected to my third term here in Sarasota County. And I was the supervisor of elections in DeSoto County in the 90s, when I was in my 20s. I'm the only person in Florida to have ever been elected supervisor of elections in more than one county. I ran there first round when I was 22. I was in my 20s when I served as supervisor. I served through the 2000 election. Remember? Wow. So I was a supervisor at that time. I didn't run again in 2000. I moved to Sarasota and started over again. And you know, I was 30 or so and thought I'd be the supervisor of elections here the next day. That's not how this works. So it took a little paying my dues and some time to get the job that I really wanted to do here. I'm not moving to a third county. I plan to retire, hopefully, as your supervisor of elections. And so I got the idea to run for supervisor when I was about 14 or 15 years old. I had a neighbor that ran for sheriff in DeSoto County. He lived right down the street from me, so my summer off from school, he would pick me up at my house every day, and I would go chat with him. I went with him everywhere that he went. When he'd speak to groups like this or knock on doors, and he saw I was taking an interest, and he said, you know, it would be a great job for you to run for some days to be the supervisor of election. So this is really a lifelong calling and passion for me. As I told the group last night, I'm going to retire as your supervisor, and this is going to go one of two ways. So either I'm going to retire willingly with my pension from the Florida retirement system. I'm still far too young for that. I am. I'm the youngest of the 5 constitutional officers still. Even though I started out so young, in Sarasota County, I'm still young. And you know what I mean. And in Venice, I'm super young. Just a little boomer, folks. But, or you're going to retire me at the ballot box. That'd be the other way that I would retire out of this job. So with that, I think I'll open it up to whatever kind of questions, comments, concerns that you have, because I want to hear from you. Because it's more important to hear your voices than mine, because that's what this is all about. It's about your voices.
Okay, I'm relatively new. I've only lived here 2 years. I just want to confirm that if I register to get a ballot mailed to me for the primary, I will get one for the general, or do I have to request one?
It depends on how you made the request. Most people request it for all elections through the period of time that they have. My guess is that's probably what happened.
I did it when I got my license, when I registered.
You may want to confirm that you have a vote by mail request on file with us. Some people request it for individual elections because maybe they're visiting their grandkids in Ohio, and any other time when other requests was made.
And so how do I check?
Call 941-861-8618. Operators Chamber, or you go to our website at Sarasota Votes, VOTES.gov. Just make sure you go to the government URL at the end of that, and you can look your stat. You can look it up online. Your status there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you know when we're gonna be getting, when you're gonna start mailing out the mail ballot?
Yeah, the military and overseas go 45 days. The domestic go 40 days. So that's about the end of September. I think about 26, something like that.
So, I have a question about the audit, and you said that you audit what happens through the polling machine, or through the
Through the
machine?
tabulation, yeah.
Yeah, and what about the mail-in votes? Do those get audited?
Well, I mean, those are part of the, every ballot is going through this audit system. Yeah. But with the vote by mail ballots, remember, these aren't, we don't mail out ballots to any and everyone. Just like I was asked here, you have to make a request. You have to provide identifying information, like your driver license number, your Florida identification card number, your last 4 of your social security, depending on what we have on file to confirm your identity. Those ballots are only mailed to your address on file. If you wanted to go to another address, you have to provide that to us in writing. These are not forwardable. It says on the envelope on the outside, do not forward. So if you're not there to get it, because some people forget and try to forward their mail to, again, you know, wherever, another state, it's not going to forward there. It's going to come back to my office at that point. So they're very controlled. The other thing is that voters sign their voter certificate. We check every signature on those voter certificates. We also know there's not one ballot. I mean, we all live in different areas, so there's a lot of different ballot styles in the county. They're precinct specific and they're groups inside the precincts. So we track, while you do have a secret ballot, we know if we've issued 100 101.1 ballots. And we know if we've issued 20 of them by mail, 10 of them early voting, 5 on election day. So we're reconciling all of those numbers. And so we're looking at people versus pieces of paper and what ballots you should have gotten and what we have in our possession, so that that is all reconciled. It's pretty complex in detail.
A friend of mine is going to be in Chicago on voting day, and she's going to be there for about 10 weeks.
So she's going to vote often.
She's very concerned and wants to make sure she votes, especially in this election. So if she writes to your office, you will mail her ballot to Illinois?
Yeah, we can send her a ballot to Illinois. She just needs to contact us, and if she provides it to us in writing, but my staff will walk her through it. So if she calls us, the easiest thing is to call on the phone Monday through Friday. I mean, they're sitting there, like I said, we have a call center. So this is what they do, and they specialize in it because they want to make sure that every eligible voter gets to cast every eligible ballot in this county.
Thank you.
Have you seen an increase in young voters for this election?
I haven't tracked by age, but typically, no, it tends to skew toward older voters. The only time I saw that in my career was the 2008 presidential election.
Okay.
But at this point, I don't know if that's the case.
I think it's going to happen.
So for mail-in ballots, when do they have to be postmarked?
So we have to receive those ballots back by election day, 7 p.m.
Okay.
So here's what we tell voters. If you get to a week out and you haven't mailed that ballot back to us, don't mail it at that point, because it's probably not going to get to us. We have secure ballot intake stations at my 3 offices, Sarasota, Venice, Northport, and at all the early voting sites. There's friendly staff there that are monitoring those boxes. You'll know that they're right next to them. That's from my direction, to keep an eye on what the activity at those secure ballot intake stations. But that's the best place at that point to drop them off, because postmarks don't work for domestic ballots. Overseas military and overseas civilian get an extra 10 days, but not domestic. Yes.
Yeah, I have a question on identification, because the other day I went to get a new driver's license, and they told me my driver's license number has changed because of state law.
Right.
So the driver's license number that is on my identification for you is not going to be the same as
Yeah,
the
we're
one I
working
show.
through that. We're working through that with the state now. I think the way that they're doing that is providing us the new numbers from someone who's already an existing have an existing driver license number, and there'll be a, kind of transfer of that data to us, so.
Could you repeat that question again?
So she was asking because the driver licenses in Florida are coming up with a new number schematic. The reason is because you can figure out, you can take that, you can figure out what someone's driver's license number is with the way it's set up right now. So if you know pieces of information, date of birth, whatever, there are things that it wasn't a very sophisticated way to create the numbers. So they're changing that naming convention or numbering convention for the driver licenses. And she said she just got a new license. She was concerned about that we wouldn't have that new number. But it's my understanding that we're getting that information from the DMV because there's communication there with the Florida voter registration system. At least that's my understanding right now.
I worked the polls in August, so my understanding is that once you're registered to vote, I'm kind of confused, because when people came in and they were worried about their driver's license being, whatever, but we didn't check any numbers on it.
No, but say for a vote by mail, there are points. So vote by mail requests, they just
You did, yeah.
so we do check the number and not at polls. And thank you for your service, and I appreciate that. But not at that point. But there are other points that we do check those numbers. Mm-hmm.
So what would happen if it didn't match up? When we mail something, someone mailed it.
It depends on the situation. I wouldn't worry about that too much right now. I mean, we will work it out. So I wouldn't put too much worry into that right now because I haven't seen where it's an issue yet. If it was, we'd be raising the, they'd hear about it in Tallahassee. Supervisors of elections are not a quiet bunch. They will fight on behalf of their voters and to do.
You mentioned having a personal oversight over all the steps, and it sounds like many, many hours. Does every supervisor of election do that same oversight?
Can you repeat?
Yeah, it has to be.
Repeat the question.
So what was asked was about the personal oversight that I said that I provide. It has to be a canvassing board member. The law requires at least one member there. And so the canvassing board appoints me to do that because, first of all, I'm already there and it makes the most sense for me to do this. And I prefer to do it personally, right? It gives me confidence, and when I'm out here talking to all of you, since I'm the supervisor of elections, I'm the one that you all have hired. I mean, you can have canvassing boards, you can have poll workers, you can have all the other people involved in the process, but at the end of the day, the one that you're going to look to get this right or not is Ron Turner. And I know that. And so the buck stops with me. And so I take that very seriously. Yes.
What worries you about this election?
She said, what worries me about this election? And I snickered. Listen, I haven't had any waking up at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning yet. That'll happen. I'm worrying about things as we get closer in the next few weeks. So that's coming. Because all the best laid plans, right? This is huge. We have 330,000 voters, more than 80% of them. So I call this, it's different than the primary. I say these are the Publix voters. These are people in line at Publix or at the deli or whatever that may not be engaged in anything else, but they're going to go vote for president, right? And you think about the government office or agency that we run. Now, you might look at, say, like the tax collector DMV on any given day at the Terrace building downtown, and they probably have the most customers on a day coming in, right? We have the most customers at any given time because almost the entire county comes to us at one time and interacts within 2 weeks or something. Name another business or agency that has that happen. Like everyone, pretty much. Like I said, when you've got almost 80 to 90% of people registered, and more than 80% of those people showing up, I mean, it's almost the whole county. And most people don't have that intensity. Maybe Publix the day before Thanksgiving, or Home Depot before a hurricane or something. But most people don't have that kind of intensity. So because there's just a lot in a very short period of time. And we do the best that we can, but then things, don't always go as planned. And we know that it's going to happen, you just don't know what that is. And then sometimes in this environment right now, you know, things are, passions are heightened. Trying to be correct here in the politics. So sometimes when things don't go as I had planned them with my team, that can lead to, you know, other things in this heightened passion environment.
So,
Understand?
Thank you, got it.
so that was my question, like going beyond Sarasota County, looking at the whole state of Florida, do you feel that in every county, the director of elections is as thorough as you have been and as our elected officials have been in supporting you?
Well, Florida has been called the gold standard in elections. You know, I told you I went through the 2000 election. We certainly learned a lot through our mistakes here. We're always improving. But Florida, there's several things that Florida does that I think make us a success, and it kind of stood out in 2020. One of the things was we already had vote mail ballots, no excuse absentee ballots, so they came vote mail ballots. We already had them in existence. Some of the states did not have that to any degree. So they were really going from zero to this huge onslaught of it. We were already there. So while we had anticipated we'd have 100,000 of them in Sarasota, we had 140. So there was a 40% increase, but we knew, you know, we were pretty prepared, right? We just had to ramp things up a little bit. The other thing that we do is we begin that process, which I talked about with the personal oversight, the opening of the vote by mail ballot things, weeks before the election, weeks. So we start opening, tabulating. We don't have the results until after 7 p.m. But all of that's done in advance. So by the time we get to 7 p.m. on election night, all the early voting is done, and then most of the vote by mail. Why do I say most? Because you have until 7 p.m. And some people are going to be coming running through the door in Northport between 5 and 7. And I got to get all those ballots from Northport and Venice up to downtown Sarasota. I got to check all the signatures. You got to go through all that rigmarole. So there's some, but you got 99% of it at that point. So when we here are the results after 7 o'clock, and those are going to be most of the vote by mail and the early vote. Some of the states, they can't touch their vote by mail ballots after the polls. So they had to start, well, we did it in 3 weeks and try to start doing it then. So that is successful. The other thing is we haven't had any closed topic to ticket elections in a while. Of course, 18, we had 3 statewide recounts, and we're through that year, because I was your supervisor here, that. But since that time, we really haven't had any recently too close. 18 and prior we did. Most of the top of the ticket were like 1%, 1.5% or something. So, you know, I don't care who wins. It's not my job to care who wins, but I want them to win big. Let me just say, just please make the margins wide enough, because that lends itself again to, you know, things. But are the supervisors? Yes, by and large, supervisors of elections in Florida are very dedicated people who work extremely hard. And when you look at the 67 counties, more than 30 of them are small. They're not the size of Sarasota. Some of those counties, many of them have just the supervisor and maybe 1 staff member with them. And that's the way it was in DeSoto County with me. So I was answering the phone, looking at the stamps, a little instruction, So when I came here, I told everybody, I've done every one of your jobs, which was true, because I had to do it. And so that was a great experience to have.
I am trying to remember the precise name of the system, but was it the ERIC system?
Mm-hmm.
That was deduplication from state to state that
Right.
we were subscribed to.
Yeah.
Our governor decided that we did not want to use that system any longer. What systems do we use in this state as well as in this county?
Well, because Eric, you know, we had that, it was a consortium of 30 states, I think, in the District of Columbia, and we didn't use it long. Mostly we used it in 2021 because we were only part of that for a short period of time. The county was not the signatory to that. I think it was state to state, and it was the state of Florida who was the member of ERIC, and the state of Florida who decided to not be a member anymore of ERIC, to share that data. There are some data sharing going on between the state of Florida and a few states, but it's not as widespread as the ERIC system. But there are a few states, I think, that they have agreed, the Secretary of State, to share at the state level. But I don't think it's that many. I'm not sure what the number is right now.
And what does the county do as far as?
We have to use the data given to us from from the state of Florida, right? So we're in the Florida voter registration system. Most of our data is coming through the state, Secretary of State's office and the Department of State. Now, we do get data through that, like, they're getting DHS&B data. We get vital statistics, Social Security, Master Death Index. They take thousands of people off the rolls for deaths every year in Sarasota County. So they have access to the databases in the state of Florida. And then, as I said, I think they have some kind of compacts or memorandum of understanding or something, maybe with a few states to exchange data.
Thank you. Can I ask another one?
Sure.
So how do you clean up the rolls? I mean, because you just mentioned that, there's a lot of people who die in this county every year.
We do what we just said. So we have access every day. Social Security, Master Death Index, Florida Vital Statistics, that gets most of it. Sometimes we'll have people contact us, here's a death certificate, my spouse, my parent, whatever. 99% of the time, when we pull up their voter record, they're already off the rolls. It's pretty automated. When I started in the 90s, you would cut out the obituaries from the newspaper and put down on that page. That's how we have. Most of this is automated now. We also use National Change of Address, the USPS, and then we do a mailing to voters. If you don't vote in 2 general elections, we have to send a notice to you, and then we start a process. But we removed last year more than 30,000 people from the active voter rolls, put on an inactive status. That was the most robust voter registration list manual we've ever done in Sarasota County. Yes.
Have you noticed among your workers and volunteers more nervousness because of the, threat of violence or possible violence in previous elections?
Yes, it's been discussed, yeah. I mean, we've taken steps with our staff and our facilities and things to secure it for us, but also to secure your ballots and equipment. I think we have to protect those things. During canvassing board meetings and things, we have law enforcement there with us.
More than in the past?
We've always had some, but yes, we've increased things. Yeah.
A question from somebody who's not here tonight, but she noticed that the population of Sarasota County has gone up, and yet the number of voters has gone down.
Well, that was because we did I just
Oh,
mentioned the
because of
30
that.
some odd thousand. So we went from 350 something thousand, we're to 330 now. I'm going back up. But that was because now what that tells me is we already had 80% turnout with people, those people who were on the rolls who were not voting. So if you remove those people, what do you think that's going to be your percentage turnout? Right. My data person said all things being equal with no growth or change from 2020, we would have had an 89% turnout. I'm not saying we're going to have an 89% this time. I'm saying if we, from 2020, if we would have taken everything from there, that's what it would have looked like. So that's why the number's gone down. But what you do have are more active voters, and the people that were removed are on an inactive list through 2 general election cycles. They can show up at the polls. All they have to do is fog up a mirror, anything, and let us know they exist. They go right back to active, no harm, no foul to them. So it's not quite as scary as people make it sound sometimes. Like, no, it sounds really scary. We don't purge people. It takes years to get people off the roll. I mean, unless you die or ask to be removed, or you're a felon, and those sorts of things. But just out of normal course of business and life, it takes years to remove someone from the voter roll. So it's not a fast process to just yank them from the rolls or purge them, and we don't purge.
I wonder if you've seen any difference over the past year in voter registration. I know you go to the schools every big election. But have you noticed an increase or decrease in voter registration that you've been doing from your office?
We've seen an increase. Like I said, we've added several thousand people to the roll since last year when we did the removed 30,000 from the active rolls. So the numbers are creeping back up again. I'm sure in the next few weeks. The voter registration deadline is October 7th for the general election. But again, our voter registration numbers are pretty high here. So if you look at the eligible population, 18 years of age and older, if you look at those numbers here, a significant portion of them are registered to vote in Sarasota. I mean, we're kind of a unique place, as we all know, for a variety of reasons.
Hi, also a poll worker for you. We have
God bless
noticed,
you.
we have noticed a lot more aggressiveness from the campaigners in the 150-yard zone. What can the clerk do, or what right or responsibility does the clerk have to go out there and tell them to calm down, let the people get
Yeah,
out
we
of the
were
car
having
before
that
they
conversation in our office today, because I think we're gonna put together one pager for facilities and poll workers and things. So what, and thank you, in all seriousness, for helping, but what is being described is that at a polling location, a early voting site, or even one of my offices, once vote mail ballots start going out, there is a 150 feet no solicitation zone. We mark that, and there's not to be any solicitation within that area or in that facility. I'm pretty strict on that, whatever solicitation is. You know, in 2020, I had the census want to come in and do, and I was like, no, I don't allow anything, because I don't know what people are saying or doing. So it's better to keep everyone out of there. That's the fairest way to do this, right? But outside the 150 feet, Florida law, there's a law in the books that requires the property owners of the polling locations to allow solicitation. So, and you have First Amendment issues. Free speech, freedom of assembly, freedom to petition your government. So it's a delicate balance. We're talking about that right now. But we really don't have any authority outside the 150 feet, and the property owner is limited in what they can do, you know, and believe me, I had complaints every day, all day long during the primary, as you can imagine, from, you know, people that felt that people that were approaching them were being a little too forward or aggressive with that.
Voters come in and tell us, you know, they wouldn't even let me get out of my car before they were shut.
I know, and the problem is that it's not, I mean, the way we may perceive that, one person may think that's great if it's their team or their candidate, someone else may not. It's a really delicate balance, and there's not much that's going to happen. I mean, unless someone's physically assaulted or stopped from going in or out, like for real, not, you know, just, you know, not. I do coordinate with law enforcement. I talk to Sheriff Hoffman often. He's a great supporter of our office. There are limitations, though, because law enforcement can't come in polling locations or within 150 feet unless they're there to vote. That's to preserve the civilian nature of elections here. And but I talk to him often. Also, the chiefs of police coordinate with them to make sure they know where the polling locations are, where the early voting sites are, what the hours are. If I call them, believe me, they will call my cell phone if something rises to that. But most of this never rises to that. A lot because of that Florida statute, but also because of First Amendment rights. I mean, that's why it's first, right? And I mean, freedom of speech is a pretty powerful thing, as we see here in our country, whether we agree sometimes with the nature of that speech or how the method and the way that it's expressed. But it's pretty protected, so hang in there, because it's going to be like that again in November. But we're trying to get a little bit more prepared than we were in the primary. But our hands are kind of tied. But you can't tell them you don't have any authority outside of 150 feet. Call 911.
You mentioned earlier about how people could not put in a request for their ballots to be forwarded. Do you get a lot of them back?
We get some back. I think in the primary we get about 5,000 back, but that is a lot less than it used to be. We used to get back, I think, like maybe 11, 12,000. I mean, we would get back a lot. We've trimmed it down by our list maintenance and trying to keep the voter rolls as things possible with people. And we also, listen, we're not in the gotcha business here. I mean, if somebody is doing something they shouldn't do, yes, I'm in the gotcha business. I had someone arrested for petitioning fraud, right? So I'm not afraid to have someone to do what we need to do. But for voters, we're not in the gotcha business. We want to do whatever we can to help. So we will work through it with the voter, because sometimes if it's returned to us, they just forgot. And so we'll start a process of trying to reach out to them to see, did you just forget, you know, that you were going to be in Ohio with your grandkids or whatever? Now let's see how we can get this ballot to you or whatever. Because we want to make sure everyone's voice is fraudulent and, you know, but, yes.
What
the elderly population, sometimes signatures are not quite the same as what's on the older.
So there's a process to cure signature mismatches and unsigned vote mail ballots. Sometimes people drop them in the mail, forget to sign them. We reach out to the voters. We send them a letter, we call, we email, and we send them a text message. Depending on, I said, listen, we chase voters down like we're chasing a bad debt. So in Sarasota County we do. I mean, we use cold compresses, warm compresses, and hold their hands and gently walk them across the finish line to get this thing done. So we pride ourselves in our customer service, our voter service here to try to help voters, because I know it can be a confusing thing, or you forget things, life happens. But in the case of the signature mismatch, we reach out to them so they can sign an affidavit and provide a copy of their ID to us to cure it. And we cure a lot of them, not all of them, but we do cure a lot of them. And if it's someone whose signature has changed, then it's good to, on occasion, update your signature with the elections office, because we use it for petitions, checking, and for the vote by mail. Because we look at tens of thousands of petitions a year for those constitutional movements that were signed here in Sarasota County, and also candidates. So I think there's some years that we may have verified, because we have to look at the petitions one by one to verify the signatures on them. I think we did close to 100,000 of them.
Wow.
So any more questions? Great questions.
So this is technical, I guess. Given the new laws about who can turn in your vote by mail ballot, do we have anything to offer older residents in improved facilities other than vote by mail? What's happening?
So I have a program, a supervised voting program that Florida law allows. So I go into more than 50 facilities in Sarasota County.
Okay.
We have probably the most robust supervised voting program in the entire state of Florida.
Very, very good. Very, very good.
Now, what the law says, so if somebody requests a vote by mail ballot, we can go in, we send teams, Democrats and Republicans in there. The whole process is supervised, so that way we're protecting the independence of the voter.
Excellent.
Right?
Excellent.
Because they still have their right to vote, unless a court removes that right.
Right.
I did have an instance this year where I had a facility that did not want us to come in, and I told them that was not going to be an option. So that I was coming, and if I had to bring people with me to make sure I could get into that facility, that would happen. So, yeah, no, we take this stuff seriously in Sarasota County, and we care, and we want to get this right for you. But I'm not afraid to, whatever I got to do to get the JOB done. That's what you hired me for. So you can't be a shrinking violin. I'm a nice guy, but you can't be a pushover in this, because you get places like that. And I was like, to the staff member, I was like, you can't do what you're doing. And they did it for a while. I was like, well, you don't understand. And let me explain this to you.
Yeah.
In terms you can understand. That there may be an orange jumpsuit involved.
So if you go into these facilities, the people get to sit and fill out their ballot and then just hand it over.
Yeah,
to
they
you.
sign it and then we bring it all back. So see, the signatures, we've seen it's such a great program.
Okay.
Good.
And that way, it's independent from family or staff at the facilities. If people want assistance, they can request assistance under Florida law, the type of assistance they want. But for us, we're just facilitating the process for them.
Good.
Are there any restrictions on poll watchers in the state?
Yes, poll watchers are appointed by political parties and campaigns. Poll watchers can be obviously inside the polling location, but only one at a location that represents that particular group or entity, whatever, at a time. They cannot speak to voters inside the polling location or within 150 feet of there. They're supposed to observe. If they have questions, they're supposed to interact with the clerk, and the clerk who is in charge of the polling location. That is the only person that they are to interact with there.
Are they allowed to take tabulations of machines or?
Yeah, they write down some numbers and things like that. I restrict photography because you could you recreate a seal or something. I mean, I don't want people to have that, but if you want to write down numbers and things, go for it. And they do. I don't know what they do with it. But.
They reported back.
I know, they do. They said they have, I'm joking. They're actually great because our poll watchers, most of them are very polite. Some of them become poll workers, and a lot of them go out and are great ambassadors for us to say what a great job that we do, because there's nothing to hide. I mean, it's not my elections, these are your elections, and so you just hired me to facilitate it with a great team of people, and they're part of that process. And that was one of the things that I instilled in the elections office and the staff when I became supervisor. I said, while the voter is a customer, and probably the most important customer, they're not the only customer in this business. So whether that is a poll watcher, or candidates, or political parties, or whatever, or groups, or the legal movement, there are a lot of other customers that we deal with in our line of work here. So the voter is one of them, and the most important one, but it's not the only customer that we deal with. So.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate everyone. I just appreciate you letting me do this job for you. It's an honor.
Well, we appreciate you spending the time with us. Thank you so much for coming.